everything. It's been so long.
How are you feeling? Like, what was that? Hey, Nabs, how you doing? How'd you feel about that first session?
Oh, no, that was good. It's good just revising. Even though, like, I knew all of the stuff, it was like the way you explained some things, like, completely forgot about the whole G clef, F clef thing.
Yeah, I like it because it's rudimentary, and it's nice when things are just objective, and like that is the case. And what would you like to explore learning in this session? Hey, Carrie. So I want to open up to you guys to get an idea of what. Hey, Linda. I want to get an idea of where you want to. Hey, Kancha. Yay. So because this is the intermediate, I'm not really sure what that means. To me, music is just music, but you can put it on a scale. Pardon the pun, or don't. It's up to you. So I want to get an idea of what you want to get out of this session, if anything at all.
Let me think what's the next step that I need to do. I mean, for me, I just guess like I need to familiarize myself again with scales and just the, you know, obviously if you're playing a G scale or I've got to do that homework myself, I guess. So maybe that's something I need to like, is there a chart or something that's easy to look at that we could practice to and remind ourselves?
Yeah.
Or is it, that's something
you want to get better at playing the scales or writing them, or?
Yeah, I also wouldn't mind, for me, I'm not talking about everyone else, but for me, it's like I would like to read chords and then also be able to write songs, so then be able to also accompany myself. And
yeah. I find the whole chord progression, chord stuff so confusing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would love to move our class eventually to like transcription and writing your own tunes and writing chords above it, and even like how to transpose stuff. So like putting into Sibelius, especially for you, Alinta, who's going to be putting lots of lead sheets together, and say you want to transpose something for whatever reason, you know, which I think for a singer who's leading a band is just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Now there is a document that I guess, that's not it. Actually, that's fingering. I might send that through to you guys. It actually just shows you how to play each scale based on the fingering.
Oh, that's cool.
Very helpful, very helpful.
Yeah.
Look, I got a document somewhere. I just don't know where it is. Maybe it's this one.
Wow.
This is minor scales. See, this is, I don't want teaching to be like this. It's like, okay, where do we begin? But what I'd encourage you to do, and I'll find a document with all the scales, it's fine, but also this is my style of learning, but try to make it as tactile as possible so that you're not getting distracted by how the notes look. You actually have an idea of how they feel and how they look like on the piano rather than how they're notated. So that there's one thing for reading, but there's another thing for actually going, how does this scale actually feel? Can I actually use the brain power to actually work out the scale? Because if you actually spend a bit of time working it out from scratch, you're going to retain it a lot better. So absolutely have a list of scales up. That's cool. But also I'd encourage you to go to the piano, screw the sheet music, screw a list of things, actually just go to the piano and go, okay, I'm going to play my B flat major scale and I'm going to work it out from scratch. And I'm just going to have to painfully do it rather than read it. The reason I say that is because as quite a proficient sight reader myself, I can get quite lazy. I'm like, I'll just read that, or I'll read a transcription of that and I'll learn the song. But there's such satisfaction, and this is from the jazz mindset, to listen to something or to play something and just use your ears. And this actually goes into when we're learning jazz melodic minor scales and learning blues scales. It's actually much more satisfying to learn them as shapes rather than through the notes, if you want to look into improvising, that is. Okay. So, and we'll touch on chord stuff. I'm just aware of the time at the moment. Anyone else want to shout out a few things?
Harmonics.
Yeah. Wait, harmonics as in fundamental frequencies and stuff?
Yeah, kind of. And I think it's called harmonics when you're kind of scatting and you need to like relate it back to the root scale of the song.
Oh, okay. So like
that-
extensions, color notes.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. Yes. Harmonics in a physics is sort of like timbre and how many notes in one note, but let's not get into that right now. That's like that definitely is
That's a bit too
advanced,
much.
I reckon.
Yeah.
And I'm still on that journey myself. So let's touch on really quickly major, minor, 1, 2, 3, because we're going to go.
So we're going to do a bit of chord progression.
Yeah, I want to touch into chords. I want to see how far I can get. But right now, I want to just really quickly touch on the scales, etc. Now, as we already know, tone, tone, semitone, tone, tone, semitone. Learn the major scales, okay? If you learn the major scales, everything else just falls into place. Don't learn a new formula for the minor scales. It's just too painful. I know for those that have learned like vocal music theory, they generally encourage you to learn from the root and then just use the pattern to work out the minor scale. But if you're coming from a piano perspective, the minor scale is built on the minor third below the major scale, okay? And minor third is 3 semitones. So all I need to do to create the A minor scale, and this is just 1 out of 3 minor scales, is to use the white notes in the C major scale. So I've got C major. I'm going to bring it down to minor third. And now I'm just going to play the C major scale, but I'm going to go from A to A. That is your A natural minor. And I'm going to plow through, but please speak up if you have questions. So that's what we call neighboring minor or relative minor, okay? If I said, yeah, A relative minor is relative to C major, okay? So it's going to use the notes of C major. Now, that is your natural minor. If I play the harmonic minor, I need to raise the 7th. That's the raised 7th right there. That's your harmonic minor. And our last one, our melodic minor, we raise the 6th and 7th and return the way, and then we neutralize them or naturalize them on the way back. Raise 6, raise 7th, natural. Any questions on that so far?
So the second one was harmonic minor and the third one is
Melodic.
melodic minor. So 6 and 7.
6 and 7. Raise a 7, raise a 6, raise a 7. So use the sharp sign in terms when I talk about raising. When you're doing the minor natural, it's just relative to the major scale. So all of these are relative to the major scale. Now, of course, in some schools of music theory, they'll say play the A natural minor, and they actually refer to the minor scale as flattened 3, flattened 6, flattened 7, okay? And this is going to potentially explode your brains, but they're relating A minor to A major in that point. But when I talk about minors, I'm relating it to the neighboring major. So A minor for me relates to C major, but some people's school of thought will have A minor relating to A major. So this is A major. Some people will say minor scale is A, B, flat third, flat 6, flat 7, and then up to the top. Okay, how are you going with that piece of information?
Just so you know, sometimes Daniele, the keys don't always light up depending how fast you go. Is that
sure.
for everyone?
Yeah.
Sorry guys.
It's just a little bit, you're a bit quick for the
I'll slow it down.
computer.
Is that better?
Right.
It's so laggy.
So the tricky thing is that the sound is probably coming in earlier than the visual. Is that right?
I think some of the visuals are skipped.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'll have to look into that. I'm not really sure how to fix that right now.
That's right.
Thanks for letting me know though. Bonus bonus round. Jazz melodic minor for anyone interested. Jazz melodic minor is actually, it's referred to as a jazz minor. We don't naturalize the 6th and 7th on the way back. So just a recap. Hopefully you can see this. A minor, that natural minor, just the C major scale. Harmonic minor, raised 7th. That really distinguished sound right at the top. Melodic minor, raised 6th, raised 7th. Naturalize it on the way back. And jazz minor, which you guys will rarely be playing, but you might one day. Raise 6th, 7th, and I keep it. So most jazz musicians will actually keep those raised notes when they're playing the melodic minor scale. We won't. I don't want to go too much into that right now, just because it's slightly. It'll take us into a dark place, sir.
That's advanced.
Yeah, correct. It's a dark place. Quick recap on chords. This is our major chord, and this is our minor chord. Now, major chord, I guess I'm starting to get more into practical now because looks like you guys want to actually apply this stuff. So major chord is made up of major third, which is 4 semitones, and then a perfect 5th between the root and the 5th note. Now, if you familiarize yourself with your scales, you'll be able to pull out chords super quickly because you'll know that a C major chord is built on the scale degree 1, scale degree 3, and scale degree 5 of the C major scale. So if you know every single key, for example, you'll know how to create the chord. Otherwise, you do it more slowly and you actually work out the semitones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Or you do major third, perfect 5th, okay? If I want to minor it, just flatten it by semitone. Flatten the third by semitone. There's my C minor. Any questions on that?
So it's just to refresh, because I remember, but it's like a little while ago. So you do perfect, no. So the perfect
I'll write it down.
Third.
Major third.
No, major third, which is, what do you say? You say 4 though.
4 semitones.
4 semitones.
And perfect 5th. I always forget this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 semitones. From the root note, okay? And when you're counting the semitones, don't count the first note because you're creating distance. So you need to actually move away from where you're counting.
Yeah.
Is that cool?
And the minor is just flattening. So it's actually 3 semitones.
Yeah.
So you have to C sharp. Oh, yeah, C sharp.
Someone else in the chat.
And minor is,
Or you call it a perfect.
Cool. So, and it's nice just to keep it as perfect 5th because that doesn't alter. Okay. Now I'm going to plow through shout out questions when you need to as well. Augmented and diminished.
Okay, we're just going to do this.
Augmented. So it's a C major chord, but I'm raising the 5th note. Super simple. If you had to break that down into intervals, it's actually a major third from the 1st and the 2nd note, and it's a major third between the 2nd note and the 3rd note. For an augmented chord, I'm not too concerned about the distance between the 1st and the last note, just because I'd rather just build 2 sets of major thirds. Any questions? Augmented. Augmented. That's an exercise in itself, actually just going through the piano and playing every single augmented chord. And it's always only going to be 12.
Daniele, can I ask,
yes.
With something like that, when you see it on sheet music, how would we see it? You know how you were explaining with the 7 yesterday, that's how we would see it?
Yep.
So would we see that very often, and how would it be written above?
Yep. So just to come back to the major chord. So major chords are just going to be the letter themselves. Super simple. A minor chord will either be one of these variations, C minus, CM, CMIN in a lowercase. And then an augmented can be, there's a few different ways. Sorry, I'll draw that a bit nicer. So sometimes you'll see a C aug. Quite commonly you see C aug, actually. Sometimes you see C plus, if it's a bit more of a kind of jazzy tune. And then C sharp 5 is common, but not too common, I don't think. You generally see maybe C sharp 5 in like a maybe this time or something, because it's actually talking about, is it maybe this time? No, it's something else, isn't it? Just that really, like, it's called a line cliche that we hear in a lot of songs. This is something that I can't remember. So does that answer your question, Kauri?
Yes, yeah. So
C
it's always
aug.
third distance between the chords. That's the like rule.
Major third between, is that, yeah, major third to create the chord.
Okay.
So it's important to know intervals so you can build it. But for example, you can either build it that way, or you can, the chart will say play a G augmented chord. Well, at that point, my brain goes, I know a G major chord. I'm just going to raise the fifth, because that's just much easier if I relate everything back to major. Are you guys happy for me to go into diminished chords?
Yeah.
All right. Augmented, diminished, diminished. Guys, I've had too much coffee. I'm so sorry. I'm like talking. I can feel myself talking really fast. Oh, gone intermediate. Sure. All right. Round one. Here's my diminished chord. It is built up of 2 minor thirds. Okay. Minor third, and then another minor third from that second note. Minor third is 3 semitones. The diminished is probably the most ambiguous chord, because we kind of, augmented and diminished chords are referred to as symmetrical chords, because they're split evenly down the middle. The distance between the first and the second note, and the second and the third note, are the same distance, as well as the augmented chords. So you can keep building out the C diminished if you want to. Sorry, that's a bit complex. So 2 minor thirds, and I'll let you know how that's written in sheet music. Generally, C dim, C little circle, and that's pretty much it. Once we get into half diminished and full diminished, then they'll be written a bit differently. Any questions on the diminished? There's just 2 minor thirds. Your most sort of cliche sound. Now, you can go into the C major, flatten the third, flatten the fifth. There's your C diminished. All right, I might try pull up a piece of music. Does anyone have any questions so
I
far?
want to know a little bit more about when you've got a diminished seventh.
Yeah.
How it.
What is that about?
Um,
how to play it, or how to
play it? I'm a music teacher myself.
Yeah, cool.
I'm a teacher, but what I don't quite understand is how it relates back to the tonic, because you could basically, when you're writing a chord chart, you could use any of those notes. Just say it's C, E flat.
Yes,
G
and we're
flat.
talking about the full diminished, aren't we? So let's take a step back for a second, and we'll move on from triads, and we'll talk about 4-note chords.
Okay.
So there are two types of sevenths, two types of 4-note diminished chords.
Okay. Yeah.
So there is the C dim 7 and there's C half dim 7. Okay, so the C diminished 7th and C half diminished 7th. The
Yeah.
C diminished 7th is the most common in like classical music or Western, more classical. The C half dim is actually more apparent in jazz.
Okay.
So when we have the C diminished 7th, we're building minor thirds constantly. So we go C, E flat minor third, G flat minor third, B flat minor third. And there, oh, no, sorry. There. So minor third, E flat to G flat minor third, G flat to A minor third. So I just want to make sure everyone's on par with that. Oh, sorry, on board with that. So that's your generally I'll refer to it as full diminished or diminished 7th. We'll talk about how it functions in a moment because I understand in terms of harmony, it's actually it's probably the most complex, even for jazz musicians to kind of go, how is it functioning? What is it doing in the composition? Because you can alter the root note and actually change the way it's functioning in the composition. But I don't want to get too much into that yet. So I just want to make sure you're able to read the symbols for everyone else in the group as well. C half dim. I haven't written that right. My bad. Sorry, guys. That's actually a double flat. Yeah. So notice I didn't draw it on the A, and that's just for a neatness's perspective. We actually want to make it look like thirds when we're drawing it on the sheet music. So B double flat is just 2 semitones down. B double flat, 1 flat, 2 flats. Is everyone clear on that? Double flat, it's just 2 Bs, 2 flats next to each other. When we are doing the half dim, we don't double flat. Minor third, but the distance between the third note and the fourth note is going to be a major third. That is a half dim. And generally for those that are sort of jazz hats, you'll hear that's your minor 2/5. Rather than actually the full diminished, and I apologize, this might be going down some weird tunnel for a second. The full diminished is actually, you'd see that more in a major tune, especially like your kind of early 1910s, 1920s sort of thing. That C diminished is actually just interrupting, it's delaying the dominant chord. Okay, so it's delaying the F7 so that I can get the resolve a bit later on the B flat. And I realize that won't make sense to a lot of you guys.
So Daniele, just to recap this one. So it's
Yes.
a minor third, and then a major third on top.
Correct. Yep. Minor third, major third. The last thing I'll leave you with is that it's also referred to as a C minor 7 flat 5. And so the jazz school of thinking, it's actually more commonly referred to as C minor 7 flat 5. I realize that doesn't really look like a minor. I'll draw it out. So I'll just explain that properly because I haven't really touched on minor 7ths. So very last thing, we got our C minor. Happy days? Yeah. All right. Now, this is where the melodic minor comes into play, or the natural minor. So the C natural minor is, and it's built off the E flat major scale. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add the 7th note of that scale to my chord. So I've got C minor, and I'm going to add the 7th note of that scale. It just so happens to be the flattened 7th of the C major scale. Okay, and don't stress too much if you're not keeping up. But that is my minor 7th. C minor with a flattened 7th on top. If I flatten the 5th, I have my C half diminished. So it's actually more commonly, it's in a weird way, it's more correct to actually say C minor 7 flat 5. is actually just kind of spells out the chord a little bit better rather than the C half diminished, because it creates a lot of issues. Just to explain one more time, that can be the C diminished seventh can be a C little circle 7, and then C half diminished can sometimes be a little diagonal line through the circle. All right, I'll leave it there. Any last final words? Sorry if I exploded everyone's brains, but this is the class to do it, I reckon.
It was great. I mean, it's a lot. I just need to practice.
Yeah, totally. You know what? And the way I see it is there's no harm in getting exposed to more complex stuff. From a learning perspective, if you're sort of a bit hard-edged about it and really want to know, but you're kind of finding a hard way in, that's when it gets troublesome. But if you just want to allow it to just sort of wash over you, and what doesn't make sense doesn't make sense, what does make sense does, great. That's good too.
That makes sense now with the C minor 7 flat 5. It's easier to read.
It's more logical, right?
You kind of go, oh, okay, it's a 7, but you're just flattening that 5.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll talk about functioning of chords much later, because that's starting to get into composition and jazz improv. But I'd like to, on Wednesday, if you guys are joining with the intermediate, to actually talk about more 7th chords. And hopefully by Friday, depends where we're at, we can actually talk about what it means to color the chords and to pick chord tones from improvisation, and hopefully relate it back to some improvisational scales to actually play over chords. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
And we'll get into pop stuff as well. Like just pop tunes that we can just improvise over. Yeah, sorry.
Are you able to send us what you've just written out?
Yeah, I'm going to send you what I've written out. Hopefully, I'm going to try to create a Dropbox. And then if all goes to plan and my technology has worked, I'll have recorded this session. Hopefully.
So also,
yeah.
What do you think is good for us to practice just scales and getting to know them better? And then
to get familiar with them?
Yeah.
I would start with C major.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would actually familiarize yourself. If we're going hardcore, right? Why not? If we're going hardcore, I'd familiarize yourself with all the major scales. Okay. Yeah. And if that's a bit daunting, just take it to just fix, even just over the next week, just focus on at least 3 major scales. But one exercise that my piano teachers would tell me to do would just be to play the major scale, then jump up a 5th and play the major scale of that note, just as exactly what I was saying. So an exercise that I would do until I met myself back in C major would be, and I'll just play it quickly, it doesn't have to make too much sense. I'd start with C. Piano's really soft for some reason. Anyway. Can you hear the piano? That's weird. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. We heard the piano as well.
Oh, okay, cool. And then I'd go to G major. And then I'd go to D major. A major. So I'm just going to the 5th note every time. E major. B major. F sharp major. C sharp major. A flat. E flat. Oh, sorry, that wasn't E flat, but anyway, I'll keep going. B flat. F major. And then I'm back to C major. Now, I sort of just trudged through that a little bit, but my point there being is always allow it to relate back to the 5th note prior. So I'll try find a list of scales that you can learn from, but just go to the piano and start playing C major, play G major scale, play D major. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so circle of 5ths basically.
Circle of 5ths. Yeah. Look, and if you really want to, if you want to jazzify it, do the circle of 4ths. So just go back the other way around, and that will make sense a bit later. So you just go in the reverse order. You go C major, you go back to F major, you go back to B flat major, go back to E flat major. For whatever reason, that just makes it a bit more jazz, but it won't explain things right now. It'll make sense later down the track.
You're
cool?
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Great.
Thank you, Daniele.
Thanks, team. Is anyone, do you guys receive like a massive amount of emails with?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that, should I not do that? Is that annoying?
They all correction emails?
They're just corrections. They should appear on your calendar, I hope, but
yeah.
I I just wonder if I should just move to not doing emails and just keep it on the Facebook group, or just send you a link instead of doing it.
It's every day, isn't it? Like,
every day at 12 p.m. Wednesday, I've had to change. So I apologize if you can't make it. I've had to delay it by a half hour, both sessions.
so fun.
I'm sure you guys have time.
There's so much to do. I've got another lesson.
Great. So look, they're every day. They're on the Facebook as events. I'm just trying to work out what the best way of communicating this to you guys is. But I know for some people, a whole hound of emails comes through and it's like, what's happening? But they're every day at 12 p.m. Wednesday's been delayed by a half hour.
And it's always the same.
We can always delete an email. It's not like it's.
Yep.
And if there's a change, then we always get it. Whereas
Yep.
I always check Facebook, I guess.
Yeah, I feel the same way. That's my way of looking at it as well. Sorry, Malini, did you or someone else said something?
I just said, is it the same link or is it
Same link? Yeah. For the sake of next week, I won't do it this week, but next week I will make the link the same for when we do the intermediate class, so that you don't have to jump out and in. But I reckon if I do it this week, it's just going to cause a bit of chaos. So for now, we'll just keep the 2 links, and then next week I'll just make it 1 link.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, team.
Thanks.
Thank
You're
you.
amazing.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
See you later.
Bye.
Thanks for coming along.
Bye.